On behalf of myself and the entire Food People team, I'd like to welcome you all to what I hope you all think is a beautiful space here at Royal Horticultural Halls, Westminster, for the 5th annual Food and Beverage Trends events to talk Trends 1920. So, the Food and Drink 1920 Trends Predictions book is here, and a lovely little bag for you as well. You'll each be taking a copy of that home with you today, together with the fold-out infographic. A few changes to this year's book. We've continued the theme of exploring the why within all of our content. It's our passionate belief that if you understand why trends are manifesting themselves, then you can develop and they will inspire more deeply engaging products and services with customers. So we've continued that. You'll find lots of storytelling around why trends are happening within the Trends book. Something that I know a few of you have been looking for a number of years is within the cuisine section, we've also introduced a fold-out tracing paper style map, which enables you to overlay last year's cuisine predictions with this year's. So you can see where the key movements and changes have been. And overall, we've tried to simplify the book, make it slightly lighter weight, and you'll find that this year that the content in the book will also work with content on the hub, so there'll be some interaction between the two as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the beginning, and we say the beginning because we believe there is so much more change to come of a major food revolution in food and drink. Our world of food and drink is being absolutely turned on its head. We are all having conversations in our daily lives that we would have never have dreamt possible a decade ago. Earlier food revolutions have changed the course of human history, beginning with the first agricultural revolution in the 18th century, the processed food revolution in the 19th century. And we passionately believe that the revolution that we're about to embark on will have exactly the same effects. Today's explosion of information technology with massively high computation speeds, mobile connectivity has unleashed a global conversation about needs, about desires, about priorities and values, and aspirations around food and drink systems. So with that in mind, we've put food revolution at the heart of our 1920 trend predictions, and this sums up where we believe we're at from a societal and gastronomical perspective. People feel that their needs are not being met, prompted by a push for change, a perceived lack of change in the status quo, a lack of kindness for people and planet. And this is all coming from consumers. Many of the trends that we've seen trickle along, bubble along for the last few years, these are really now gaining momentum. And it's these that are now coming home to roost. Consumers want to know where their food comes from. They want to know who's involved in the processes and practices behind them. They also want to know if it's good or bad for them. At the same time, however, consumers are embracing innovation in food and drink like they've never done before, from experimenting with far-flung global cuisines, new products, restaurants, hospitality services and concepts that are completely upending models and proven categories that have been around for generations. And consumers are expressing a willingness and indeed an eagerness to rethink food and drink as never before. So the food and drink mantra for 1920 is, we're at the beginning of a new food and drink revolution. So here it is, our trends framework for 1920 with its 12 mega trends and 60 trend manifestations. And these are the ones that are explored in detail in the book and in further detail on Trend Hub. So let's have a look at that framework in more detail.
In a period of flux and uncertainty, keeping up to date with trends and social and cultural shifts is more vital than ever. Using all of our global trends network, we at The Food People have created a trends framework for 2019 to 2020, compiled of 4 macro-cultural trends, 48 semiotic codes, 12 food and drink megatrends, and over 60 trend manifestations. As we take you through this framework, think how this impacts on your brand, business, or innovation pipeline. Blue Planet. What David Attenborough's Blue Planet 2 has done for public awareness around nurturing our world is beyond extraordinary. We're aware of just how huge the impact of plastic is on our oceans. We're ready for change. Rejecting the throwaway culture and prioritising sustainability, consumers want to ditch the waste and secure the planet. Ocean power. Fish is in, hook, line and sinker. The appeal of the ocean's rich offerings comes from an intention to protect the environment and reduce meat consumption. Eating sustainable fish feels a good step towards doing my bit and is preferable to eating insects. Experimenting with newer fish gives that dopamine hit of newness in a familiar context. Plant power. The potency of plant-based is only continuing to get stronger as consumers turn to nature for the answers, and it gives them a tangible way to make a difference to the global challenges that we face. Plants equals good ethos has become embedded in the consumer mind. Untouched. In our interconnected world where anything and everything seems possible, a part of us is clinging on to a life more unrefined and untouched. Less processing is the aim of the game here, finding ways to honour food in its most natural state. This is the turning away from robotics and technology and looking back to a gastronomical world less modified. Good and proper. The hallmarks of doing things well centre around time-honoured processes, championing ageing and provenance, and working with our hands. And these hallmarks are the modus operandi of many food manufacturers and chefs. Doing things well and properly is an important restoration of order in what feels like a currently disordered world. Better than wow. Never before has so much change existed within the food industry. The era of smart technology and Insta fame means that chefs, restaurateurs and manufacturers are only ever as good as their last like. Constant innovation has become the attention-grabbing currency that consumers are willing to pay for, and boy, is it big bucks if you're able to cash in. Satiate the senses. Channel your inner Christopher Columbus. You'll need those adventurous skills as contemporary gastronomy becomes less of a satiated meal, more of an exploration into uncharted sensorial territory. As any good explorer knows, rules need to be broken and boundaries need to be pushed. Tribal pop culture. Do you want to be in my gang? Food is ever the expression of self-identity and by extension, community. People are looking for their tribe and food is a way in. It's easy to see how people can bond over products from their shared histories or ingredients native to their homes. Pop culture plays a big part in both selfhood and food, bringing with it a load of nostalgia. What food can do for you. Trends within health and food are evolving at breakneck speed, often with little time to slow down and smell the probiotic smoothie. As the appetite for wellness 2.0 rages on, the healthy eating ethos becomes more specific, more personal and more intense. The delicate yet powerful link we've created between food equals health is under constant scrutiny. Experiential wellness. As trends within health evolve, they bring in more sensory aspects of eating. This ensures the freshness of the trends but also jazzes up healthier lifestyles and food, shrugging off the fusty idea that healthy eating means limitation, rigour and willpower. Giving consumers more to engage with is a key way to maintain interest. Think of this as health plus experience. Flexi food. The rules of eating have all but dissipated as everyone is doing their own thing, their own way. The industry is budding up with tech and consumers continue to beat to the sound of their own drum. The non-ownership economy gives everyone freedom and flexibility. How we eat, spend, and live is changing. We're beyond omni-channel now as the only real channel becomes the consumer. Who's in control? We have coercion from two sides. At one end, social media gets to dictate how and what we do, with everyday influencers impacting the industry and often standing up for social good. At the other end, we have a growing governmental and corporate control, a nanny state in which taxes on food are becoming acceptable and companies are dictating the diets of their employees. Add to that, consumers who are also demanding to know more about their food and where it has come from. We hope you found this introduction to the food and beverage trends for 2019 to 2020 inspirational and informative. To deep dive further into the trends most relevant to your brand or business, visit thefoodpeople.co.uk.
There we go, a brief video introduction to the food and beverage megatrends for 1920. I want to talk about a few of those in a little bit more detail with you now. What I want to cover are the megatrends and the associated manifestations that we believe will be the key drivers, the key propellant, if you like, behind that revolution. I'm going to start with Blue Planet. I think there's a key question about why environmental concerns are making more of an impact in food and drink there than ever before. The roots to this lie in a growing understanding of the negative side of the connected world. Globalization from a human history point of view has very much been seen as a positive thing, and I think probably we would all agree with that to some extent. But globalization has a number of downsides, and now we've got an increasing awareness that commerce, trade, and consumerism that drives all of our infinite number of whims and desires from a products and services point of view can have negative effects to environments and individuals in different parts of the globe. People feel powerless at a macro level, but what people can do, however, is control their own path, and it's here that we see an increasing number of conscious-driven and self-sacrificing behaviours. The various ways in which people can do their bit centre on the idea of them suppressing, if you like, their natural desires and overcoming their natural aversions. So eating something that's made from a waste product is, as an example, well, we might need to get over that from a planet point of view. Lab-grown meat, maybe it doesn't taste as good as the real thing, but we might have to get over that for the planet. So the key areas that we expect to drive this megatrend forward in the next couple of years. First of all, it's about waste, but it's also about maintaining our biodiversity, creature welfare, alternative methods of production, and also a revival of home cooking. But if we just take waste first and foremost, this is going beyond recycling. Consumers don't want to create any waste in the first place. They certainly don't want to buy into single use. As we now know, single use is the word of 2018, and that was ratified by Collins English Dictionary only yesterday. It is, in some cases, quite literally the final straw. We saw this interesting concept from Diageo during the summer months, where they were pairing edible straws with their pre-mixed drinks and cocktails. With Doug McMaster at the helm, a chef that we've seen present at our last year's Trends event and also the Culinary Congress, many chefs in different parts of the world now are banding together to fight the good fight, the waste fight, seizing the opportunity with an emerging pragmatism and optimism, like chefs from the Nola Bistro in Helsinki, and there were many other examples around the world. We now know that a third of the food that we produce ends up in the dustbin, which is still, every time I say that, I find that quite alarming. And it was a key inspiration for Rubies in the Rubble, the concept at the bottom right of the screen, who started by using waste from London's markets to create chutneys, dressings, and sauces. And I'm sure you'll have all seen in the media last week the Budgeons in Belsize Park launching their plastic-free zone last week. We've also got lab-grown, and this is where we expect to see a large part of the revolution to take place. This is about breaking with conventions and norms to tackle global problems. Lab-grown meat encompasses two schools of thought. Firstly, we've got meat grown in laboratories. This is undoubtedly further out, but it's appealing and will appeal to consumers who like meat but want it produced sustainably, or those that have opted out for those same environmental reasons. Cultured tissues offer a viable way to grow multiple meals worth of meat, but from a small number of cells. Look at the work that Future Meat Technologies and Tyson are doing, Finless Foods, and also meatless Memphis Meats as well. The second approach is a plant-based approach. Most famous example being the Impossible Burger from Impossible Foods. This company now believes that it could eliminate animals from our food chain by 2035. Who's eaten a plant-based burger in the room? Who regularly eats plant-based meat? guys from Corn down the front here. I fully expected you to put your hands up. For those of you that haven't eaten lab-grown meats, here's an example from Memphis Meats.
My name is Uma Valeti. I am the CEO of Memphis Meats. We started Memphis Meats to make eating meat delicious, safe, and healthy for everyone. We have had this technical breakthrough of using real meat cells to grow meat, the meatball that changed the world. There is not enough resources to feed a growing world's population. The greenhouse gas emissions from our process is 90% less than what traditional animal agriculture would cause. So today, what we are doing is something that we've been working on for the last 2 to 3 weeks, and we farmed meat cells from beef. We brought it over to the kitchen along with our team, and we also had a specialty chef named Dave Anderson. What we asked him to do is to recreate the experience of a meatball. He took the meat that we grew, he used a recipe, Italian meatball recipe, and created a beautiful meatball, and we watched him cook it. We watched how the meatball reacted when it was put in a pan. We heard the sizzle, we smelled the meat that was being cooked, and it was exactly what you would expect a beef meatball to smell like.
It tastes like a meatball. It's good.
You know, this is the first time a meatball has ever been cooked with beef cells that did not require a cow to be slaughtered. So, you know, this is a big and momentous occasion for us, and given that it tasted exactly like beef, it's one of the historic moments in the history of our company, and I'm glad you're here to capture it.
Thought-provoking, I'm sure you'll agree. Within this mega trend, we've also got the revival of home cooking. And if you can cook at home, you can not only take control of your food destiny, you can also do things like mitigate waste. You can tackle the issue of affordability. And younger consumers who are seeking an ethical consumerism are cooking at home and only cooking what they want and what they can afford. YouTube channels like Binging with Babish, like Sorted Food, are targeting millennials and Gen Z home cooks. And it's the perfect way to learn tips, tricks, and hacks, to inject some fun and humor to cooking. It's easy, it's step by step. There are everyday recipes and more foodier versions as well. The smartphone is quite literally becoming the ultimate sous chefs for millennials. I mean, millennials and Gen Z, they want it honest, they love to customize, they want it easy, they value the planet, and of course they'll try anything. And of course that's why we've invited Jamie from Sorted Food to talk to us later on. Then we have the mega trend of ocean power, and fish is very much talked about across our Global Trends network. Why is this making waves now? Well, a key strand of cultural meaning relating to oceans is that they represent life more than any other environment. And they don't just mean life, but they mean abundant life. They're a potent symbol of abundance as a food source. Also seen as being increasingly healthier, alternative to red and white meat. Also pescatarianism is on the increase, albeit slowly. So where do we expect the big steps forward to be within ocean power? Well, it's about things like seacouterie. It's about jerky and snacks. It's about the fin to gill movement. And just to take seacouterie first up, obviously a play on words with charcuterie. We're seeing many chefs around the world opting to move what would have been meat products, the chorizo, the terrines, the fish jerky, into this seacouterie thinking. Just the examples there on the screen on the top left. Delicious looking octopus terrine there with powder and freeze-dried peas, lemon and olive oil gel there from the Ocean View restaurant in California. You've got St. Peter's double smoked marlin ham, the bottom left-hand side, and a really interesting concept from West Coast USA, which is a fish jerky product. I remember having a conversation with someone in this room, actually, about 5 or 6 years ago, and we actually said, there's no way anyone will ever eat fish jerky. Well, now it's there, and that's what I mean about the conversations that we're having within our industry that we never thought would happen before. Have a look at One for Neptune. They've got a really interesting YouTube video, which is worth having a look at. Then we've got the fin to gill movement, and absolutely, you've guessed it, it's the latest movement to spurn off the back of nose to tail and leaf to stem. And the principles are exactly the same, but just with fish. The sentiment is this: if we're going to fish the oceans, then we need to offset this with some humility, and we need to consume the whole animal. A lot of chefs getting very excited about this around the world. Dan Barber with his tilefish cheeks, collar and hidden bits, as he called it, trending on social media over the last few weeks. There's a restaurant, Leroy, very close to here, unapologetically serving sardines and absolutely nothing else. And when we do our menu analysis, we're also seeing an increasing number of chefs offering sea, ocean, river, and estuary menus starting to come through more than ever before. Somebody very much at the forefront of this movement is a guy called Josh Nyland from St. Peter in Sydney. And he calls his new way scale to tail, and it champions all of those concerns that I highlighted in the mega trend, but also puts that together with an overall better fish experience that he's trying to create for consumers. Keywords for him are things like whole fish, butchery, and the offal being really important as well. And here's a short video of him explaining a little more about it.
Today we're here in Paddington to visit one of Australia's foremost culinary stars, Josh Nyland. He's invited us to his seafood restaurant, St. Peter, which is well on its way to becoming one of Australia's most important restaurants, an impressive feat for a chef so young.
That's why there's so many really hammered fish species out there, because everybody wants something on consistently all the time. But for us, it's more about we've created somewhere that we can buy whatever we want every day, and that gives us a point of difference. That gets customers excited. That's, conventionally, your scalia is like a bear trap thing, and then you scrape along. The issue I have with that, the pressure that you would have placed on the fish by whacking that scaler over the top of it softens the flesh. So with this, the idea is to get between the scale and the skin. This as well acts as a really good storage method, because we hang a lot of the fish and we age some of the fish as well. And when we take off the scale harbours a lot of moisture. This is the heart. The hard work that you did in terms of cutting all this and getting your hands and stuff, what that allows you to do now is to just pull the gill and pull the gut out all in one hit. This is the liver. They're delicious when they are slightly bigger. That black piece there, that's its spleen. Yeah. So we salt them down as well and smoke them like we do the hearts. Yeah, right. Because again, it's like a solid, blood-rich organ that when salted and smoked makes really delicious seasoning quality. The gills we have cooked before, we boiled them, then fried them. And then with the stomach, what we've done with that before is we've boiled it, and then we've inverted it inside out and scraped out the insides, and so it's boiled basically, and you could treat it like a sausage casing. Okay. So then we've made a fish mousse, like a fish mousseline, chopped off its liver, its heart, its spleen, it's all its bits, then piped it back inside, tied it, steamed it, smoked it, and then we've cut a disc of it and pan fried it and put it back with the fish. So it's like a all-in-one mad fish sausage. Yeah. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, we're just trying to make the wheel spin a little better.
Love the idea of a mad fish sausage. Those of you that are in the fish business or the fish processing business, have a look at what Josh is doing. It's all over the internet, doing some really interesting things, challenging supply chains, also fish processing methods as well. Then let's talk about plant power, which is all about the potency of plant-based eating. Plant-based is only going to continue to get stronger as we turn to nature for more of the answers. Obviously, in complete opposition to lab growing, this plant-first mentality assumes that a fulfilling diet can reside in nature alone, at least some of the time. The plant good ethos is starting to become embedded in the consumer mind, and we saw from the recent Waitrose Food and Drink report that 1 in 8 of us are now identifying as being vegetarian or vegan. 21% of us are identifying as being flexitarian. There's a 4-fold growth over the last 4 years of those of veganism, as we probably expect increasing levels of adoption in 18 to 34-year-olds. And the key drivers behind that were cited as being welfare, health, and environmental. And it's the mingling and union of those sort of 3 factors that have created this unique opportunity. Within the food industry, we've captured consumers' attention. That's been grabbed. Science has developed enough to innovate effectively. People's morality has been challenged around meat eating, and no one can deny the healthy appeal of plants. I'm not going to talk too much about what else sits within this megatrend. Caitlin's going to talk about that later on, and Liz Cherry also is going to speak about veganism as well, so I'll leave that to them. The next megatrend is one that we've called untouched, and in our sort of interconnected world where everything seems possible, there's a part of us that's clinging on to a life more unrefined and untouched. But why is that the case? Well, it's partly what we might call a filthy planet. It seems that every day, all over the media, we've got horrifying images of our beautiful world being polluted by human activity. And it's factors like these that are emerging in this new appreciation for untouched, food's rawness, unrefined quality, and some distance between the grubby hands of civilized man, if you like. And the food and culinary movement and gastronomy of Scandinavia is a perfect embodiment of that virgin food, and why we still see that as, even today, having been highlighted some years ago, as a cultural influence. Scandi style is still there, and this is why. Because of its unspoiled environment and its fairer population. The name of the game here is very much about less processing. It's about finding ways to honour food in its most natural state. It's almost the binary of culinary engineering, if you like. So where do we expect to see the key driving forces around untouched? Well, it's about what we've called wild food, more raw food on plates. It's about wine without sulfates, which incidentally, I was staggered to find out is now a 1.3 billion euro market in France alone. It's about unrefined quality and that continued presence of Scandi style. But just to pick up on one of the elements within that, one that we've called wild and wonderful, and the connotations of wild meat. Wild meat gives sort of meat eating a certain permissibility, I think. In a world where veganism is most definitely top dog, we can perhaps feel a little less guilty if an animal has been roving the wilderness and living harmoniously with nature before it lands on our plate. Crucially, game is absolutely where the flavour is. Chefs are playing with different cuts and preparations of game meats. We're seeing it come up in a street food format. We're seeing it buttermilk fried, smoked, grilled with pasta in pies and forming the basis for snacks as well. And consumers are going crazy for it. Sales of game rose 8.6% in the last 12 months, and 14% of the UK population now talk about regularly consuming game meat in some form. And just the examples on the screen there, we've got buttermilk fried quail, we've got Bear Burger, the American burger chain. Their sort of top-selling burger is the bison burger. And I've got pigeon cooked over charcoal in the centre there from Hyde in London. We're also seeing more raw food on plates as well. More of our food and drinks are remaining raw, just as nature intended. Still greater levels of rawness on menus. We're finding the word raw as a prefix to dishes and descriptions being used. So raw salads, we're seeing more tartars, more carpaccios, more crudos and crudo bars, more raw cakes, and generally sort of raw sections on menu. In all our menu analysis, we see more and more of this happening. In some cases as well, we see consumers identifying with increasingly with unpasteurized dairy products as well. Quite controversially, the two brands identified there, Hook & Sons and Made by Cow, one from the UK, one from Australia, are now starting to explore this unpasteurized dairy opportunity. Then we have the megatrend that we've called good and proper, and this is about a number of things. It's about time-honored processes, it's about championing aging, and the provenance and working by hand. But why are these old-fashioned ways making a comeback? As a counter to some of the other things that we've been saying so far, we're trusting new ways less and less, and there's a sort of a hidden power that's sort of seemingly almost sacred because something is unchanging over time. There is a spiraling skepticism in society generally, and if we think there have been the return of a number of old-fashioned phenomena, think about things like knitting, think about vinyl sales, real books now are starting to challenge e-book sales. And all of this happens because these phenomena are tried and tested. They're wholesome and fun, and they give a certain antidote to modern life, if you like. So old food is good food, whether that's a modern, innovative twist on a classic or food prepared just as it would have been generations ago. Doing things good and proper is an important, I think, restoration of order in what feels like a currently disorganized and disordered world. So the key areas that we expect to be the propellant behind this revolution, as I said earlier on, Well, a continued return to traditional practices, so alternative sours, heritage breeds and varieties, craft baking, meat maturation, hand-pulled noodles, those types of things. The food being the best that it possibly can be. We've got a new wave of chefs coming through, which I'll talk about in a second, and there's definitely something about dairy happening in this all-vegan world. But really importantly, it's about that emotional hook. It's about the story. It's about the link, the genuine link to the individual, their purpose and their world. So, simply the best to pick up on to start with. There's a proliferation of Michelin standard food, top-notch produce and service sort of infiltrating every corner of the food industry. But we expect this to be redefined over the next couple of years. We expect Michelin in itself to become more about diversity, more about sustainable food systems, and also stretching of cuisines, becoming more broad-minded, encompassing cuisines like African, like fire cooking. Simply the Best is also about elevated and enhanced French patisserie that we see. It's about Michelin meeting the street food. See in the picture there on the top left-hand side, and you'll see this video during one of the breaks, is the chef at Joy Fei in Bangkok, and she has one dish, the crab omelette that she cooks, which has been given a Michelin star. It's incredible to watch. You'll see it on the video later. Afternoon tea being the new playgrounds, the new brunch, if you like, the new area for twist. But there's also a move back to refinement. We said a few years ago that we expected the linen tablecloth and that level of service start to return to fine dining. We see that starting to come through now. Casual diners might find it hard to get their head around after we've been sitting on wooden tables and concrete benches for some time, but we expect to see this return to white tablecloth. And there's a piece of research done recently that if you eat off a white linen tablecloth, you're 10% more likely to give the seal of approval to that particular meal. Then we've got Chefs 2.0. We're seeing the death of the celebrity chef, and very sadly in more ways than one. This year, many of you will be aware, we lost Bourdain, we lost Robuchon, and food critic Jonathan Gold. And as these breed of chefs enter their twilight years, we see the next generation rising through the ranks, and they're proving themselves to be altogether shyer, less celebrity, in fact, more dedicated to developing the causes that they're passionate about, developing sustainable food systems, more likely to be giving a TED talk than appearing, or on social media than appearing on television. Out of the Me Too movement comes a fairer focus on females in the industry as well, and giving credit where credit's due, both in and out of the kitchen. We've got Claire Smythe and her cohort of brilliant female chefs. We had Anna Hansen presenting at the Culinary Congress. We had Claire Clark and others presenting there, shining the light very much on what's happening in the female-driven food movement. We've got Lady of the Grapes, which is a wine bar and wine shop that showcases women in the wine industry. And then, in this vegan world, we've got something about dairy. There's a definite bubble of dairy-loving consumers who definitely can't get enough of the stuff. And Asian markets in particular are turning to the delights of dairy now. Dairy-inspired desserts, cold dairy-inspired teas. Pressed cheese sandwiches are something that we see a lot of, particularly in that part of the world. The example there on the top left-hand side of the screen. But it's also two other key areas within dairy. Labneh is one. There's a great example there from Bon Appetit with their muesli toast with labneh, hazelnuts, and honey. And then there's obviously the work that Collective and other brands and businesses have been doing to bring spoonable kefir and drinkable kefir to our tables and fridges. Then we have one that we've called Better Than Wow. What used to be wow won't cut it anymore, but why is that? Well, it's the fact that food and drink needs to now be truly creative. It needs to surprise, needs to violate one's expectations, to provide an intrigue, striking context, or a shocking element. And these are the traits that we see coming through in these concepts and media-grabbing, headline-grabbing concepts and initiatives that we see. We're in an era of smart technology where insta-fame means that chefs, restaurants, brands and businesses are only as good as their last like. And a constant innovation has become the attention-grabbing currency that consumers are willing to buy into. So better than wow, what is better than wow, and where will we see that? Well, it's in better boozing. It's about the use of science for flavor. It's about that infinite taste expectation, that continued elevation of nosh into posh nosh. It's about plated beauty and the need for every plate of food, both in and out of home, to be Insta-worthy. And it's about the food revolution also touching retail experiences as well. So first, we've got better boozing in an age where we're drinking less and less. Drinking rates in adults in the UK are lower than ever before, or lower certainly than the last 18 years. A quarter of 16 to 24-year-olds are not drinking at all. So we're kissing bye to those cheap, rough around the edges gin and tonics, and we're sipping something altogether more sophisticated, more craft, more premium and more adult. The Pinkster box gin format at the top left-hand side is quite a good example of that. An example of something that you can take to festivals, enjoy in parks and out of home. And truly spiked, a category that didn't exist just a couple of years ago. Mineral water that spiked with rosé there, 5% ABV, 100 calories per can. It's also about science for flavour. And this is gastronomy turning to its anatomical makeup and the rationale, obviously, to make things taste better. This is molecular food at its finest, but not changing form for form's sake, which we saw in the last gastronomic food movement. But it's about using edible molds and microbes to enhance flavour. The use of nutritional yeast we're seeing increasingly in vegan products to give that umami, that cheesy, that savoury hit. Impossible Foods believe that the essence of meat lies in a compound called heme, which we find in hemoglobin. It's what gives beef its colour and its sort of metallic-y iron taste. Then we've got one that we've called taste expection ad infinitum. And this is all about extreme expectation, in which social media puts everything on displays. Chefs and innovators are really pushing the boat out to grab consumers' attention. And within a crowded marketplace, creativity and taste expectation is being ramped to the absolute maximum. You saw the example in the video there, the Gagan restaurant, which interprets regional Indian cuisine into sort of wow-worthy techniques. They do an amazing 25-course tasting menu, which is a 3-hour event, almost half meal, half TED Talk. And some of it's pure spectacle, and the dish that you saw on the video is called Lick It Up. It's truffle, green peas, fenugreek, and tomato, and it arrives and it's plated in front of you to kiss on full volume. So maximum taste expectation, but also within this one as well, we've got posh nosh ordinaire. This is really a continuation of the movement that we've seen where ordinary food gets taken to the next level in specific areas, particularly around breakfast, it's around bakery. There's a whole thing going on around ham and cheese toasty right now. The mortadella hot dog there on the top right-hand side. And the bread actually that's served at Brat's, the anchovy flatbread, is an amazing example of that, taking bread to a whole new level. We also see this food revolution moving into retail as well, and the rapidity within which retailers have overhauled their sort of positioning, structures and offerings has allowed for a new wave of shopping built around experience, ultimate ease of shop and digital integration. And a couple of really interesting examples happening at the moment. The Basics Food Market, which is a small format store in Portland, Oregon, using some interesting interactive features such as in-house nutrition classrooms, discovery kitchens, ingredients that are segmented by recipe, not too dissimilar, although a smaller version of what we saw Builder and de Klerk talking about last year, but they're developed by a nutritionist and on-site culinary director, and those are changing on a very regular basis. Carrefour Pro, new format in Poland. with its fresh market very much at the centre of the offering. There's also 8,000 non-food and non-stock items that you can order by 20 screens, different screens around the store that can be delivered to your home later on. And they've reinvented the way the checkout works, much more akin to what you would find in a clothing store or a duty-free at an airport, where the checkouts are in the centre of the store, creating a much more open feel. And then it's interesting what Honest Bee in Singapore have done. Honest Bee are traditionally an online grocery marketplace. They've just launched their first bricks and mortar store, and what we've seen this do is bring together some of the different retail and tech advancements that we've seen in other parts of the world, but bring it together all in one roof. So let's have a look at that. Any of you find yourselves in that part of the world, definitely a concept worth having a look at. There's quite a bit about it on sort of social platforms as well. Then we have the mega trend that we've called satiate the senses. And this is all about boundary pushing experimental sensory experiences. But why now is multi-sensory experience and drama really now making inroads into the world of food and drink? Well, it's the fact that we're all in search of more extreme and exciting food experiences. It's this uniquely stimulating sort of language of sensoriality that's being drawn upon. Technology we see as focusing more on moving beyond sight and sound into technologies that stimulate all of the senses, and food is increasingly catching up. So the big areas that we expect to push this forward over the next couple of years, well, total boundary pushing, the no rules movement will continue to live on. Dramatic eating to make better and more defined memories, new culinary frontiers, food for absolute sheer pleasure, and one that we've called World on Fire. No boundaries. I mean, yes, we've seen chefs coming into restaurants, we've seen nutritionists coming into the retail environment, but this is about complete no boundaries. It's about no physical boundaries and no inspirational boundaries, total fluidity. Restaurant Fred's in Sydney is a really good example of this, where actually the diners sit in the kitchen. There's one central cooking station with a fire hearth in the middle, and everybody sits around it. Well worth having a look at. From an inspirational point of view, Admiral Guard 26 in Copenhagen, a really good example of this. They take inspiration from Asia, the Mediterranean, and the Nordics, and there's this sort of fluid transition between all of those across the menu. So definitely from a food point of view, continued no boundaries. And then one that we've called Brave New World. And this is the playground of fusion and hybrid, one that used to be dominated by sweet meat savoury, which now feels fairly tame compared to what's actually going on in this space. And this encompasses a much broader frame of creativity in format, in flavour and concept. Those of you that work in savoury pastry will know that it's never been the most innovative area to work in, but my goodness, there's lots of excitement going on in that space at the moment. Roller in Sydney is a really good example of that. You know, they've got legendary products that people queue up for, their Reuben Sando, their garlic bread and sushi-inspired croissants. You've got Heidi Swanson with her watermelon poke. Albert Adria with his chocolate and coconut cake, which looks like no cake I'm sure that any of you have ever seen before. You've got Dinara Casco, where she's taking her culinary inspiration from geometric shapes and architecture. And then we've got World on Fire, still worthy of a mention because it continues to be one of the key factors, fire cooking, flame cooking, that we see in new openings. And there's something wildly appealing about it. Obviously, taming the flame all those millennia ago was a crunch point in human evolution, and it's still something that is exciting chefs and bartenders even now. We're seeing regionalisation of barbecue evolve into fire cooking. A lot of talk about Tanzanian, South African barbecuing. But live fire cooking, cooking over flames, live stoking, ancient-looking hearths in restaurants. Vegan barbecue, the example at the bottom left-hand side of the screen there is from a place called Homegrown Smoker, which is an all-vegan barbecue. Middle Eastern in kebab form as well coming through, salt slab cooking and the return of thin steaks. Reference points would be Reynard and Marta in New York, Fire Door in Sydney, Berber and Q here in London. So lots of interest still within fire cooking. We also have a mega trend that we've called tribal pop culture. In traditional cultures, identities were less individualistic and were more bound up in sort of collective bonds. In periods of peace and prosperity and security, individualism becomes more possible, perhaps even more desirable. But it's in times of crisis that tribal patterns start to re-emerge. And it's against this backdrop that Britishness in food is becoming more tribal. Specifically, it's being reimagined as something from a happier time from which we can all participate. There's undoubtedly more serious tribes in other parts of our life, but in food culture, it's becoming more inclusive. There's incentive for a sort of vague and fuzzy notions of Britishness and indigenous heritage to serve as a construct, a positive social meaning around food in times of uncertainty. So where do we expect those big steps forward around pop culture? Well, it's about generational throwbacks, 90s in particular. It's about indigenous ingredients, about eating British. It's about our insatiable appetite for events and creating events, whether that be a particular gathering, seasonal, sports, street food. It's about hyper-global and local. There's a renewed focus on indigenous ingredients and indigenous ingredient-led dining. And this is something that we've seen in the UK and certainly in the southern states of the USA for a few years, but we're starting to see that spread into Canada, Australia, and Japan. Just a couple of chef references for you. A guy called Jock Zomfrillo, working at Orna in Adelaide, well worth having a look at. Shane Chartrand at the River Chi Resort in Alta, Canada, also exploring indigenous ingredients, practices and processing, but all serving to protect them and being inspired by them. Then, of course, we have Eat British. So the taste for regional pride and national foods, recipes and ingredients is developing around the globe. We see that everywhere, but within the UK, British food is having that resurgence. Meat, fish, vegetables, producers from the British Isles, food inspired purely from the bounds of this geography. Obviously, there's a preoccupation with March 2019 and the uncertainty surrounding the future landscape post-Brexit. But on the plus side, that's capturing a revival of locally produced food. In food, we've got examples like Epoch, Hanson and Lambert opening in 2019 after winning £1 Million menu. Their focus on English food and English wines. Mac and Wild bringing the food of Scotland to London. Flank in Spitalfields, their modern British nose to tail. They do an amazing pork head fritter with apple and chili chutney in a bun with a cheese sauce. Absolutely divine. What food can do for you? Well, trends within wellness continue to evolve, and we've got insatiable appetite for health 2.0, but this is more about specificity. It's about individual tailoring and more functionality surrounding how and what food can do for you and how it can help you function better. But personalization is by no means a new thing. If we think about holism really taps into this ancient understanding of personalization. A holistic solution will listen to you and your particular personal needs. And this today is where we see technology and science enabling services and solutions that are targeted to you as individuals. So a number of key areas that we expect to see this in over the next couple of years and beyond: life stage and need-based propositions, living my best life, which I'll talk more about in a second, guts happy, ancient wisdom, and facts fight back. Living my best life, to pick that one off first. What's healthy for me? I think the question that we're now all starting to understand, that health resides at a personal and individual level. The tailored approach to health continues to develop at pace, and why wouldn't it? The ability to develop personalised plans is widely appealing. Lisa, the product on the right-hand side there, is really interesting. It's a virtual nutritionist that's currently being tested in London with 1,000 participants. Responds completely to human language, so you can explain to Lisa your health goals, motivations, where you are at a particular point in time, what you've eaten. You can talk to it like you were talking to a friend. And what that will do is interpret that information. You can say, Lisa, I'm hungry, and it will know that you're on Old Street and that you've had breakfast, and will recommend something close by for you to eat. Also, a really interesting development, and we're seeing a number of these develop around the world, and over the next 2 years, this is going to move forward at such pace. A new app developed by Imperial College called DNA Nudge, which is now in clinical trial with Imperial College, DNA Nudge, and Waitrose and partners, and I'll let the experts tell you more about that.
We're entering this fantastic new wave of technology inspired by genetics, healthcare, lifestyle, but more importantly, behavior.
Chris obviously is the technology guru. He fully understands how you can do a DNA test in a mobile way and in a very, very rapid speed, which is something that nobody else can do.
With DNA Nudge, we have a little device called a cartridge, and this cartridge is a complete laboratory, but miniaturized into something this size. We've got nanochemistry on this cartridge. We've got nanotubes, we've got nanowells, all in this little cartridge. Consumers want privacy. Consumers want solutions. They need decisions at the point of use, not having to wait and worry about undecipherable results. Dr. Maria Cavella, who is my co-founder, he is a world-class geneticist, and it was very important to have that class of scientists working with us.
Because now our knowledge has expanded, genetics can be brought outside of the medical field into the consumer field. We all want personalization in every choice we have, and what is the best way to personalize your options based on your molecular code. DNA Nudge is very simple. It's not major changes in your life, it's tiny shifts. They end up giving you a huge behavioral change. Even changing one packet of cereals for another one, reducing a tiny amount of your sugar, can reduce significantly your risk for type 2 diabetes.
What's key about Nudge is that everybody needs to be nudged differently. After a while, you educate yourself, and you then know which products could be good or bad for you. So then you just want a quick way of screening your product. So we came up with this idea of a DNA Nudge band. And the DNA Nudge band is actually a wearable band, but it's a laser that reads the barcode. We've got your DNA captured in a band, your own band, like an identity band. We use that with a laser to screen the product, and it will give you a yes or no with a green or red light. If we were able to nudge our behavior guided by our DNA so that we could effectively shop based upon our DNA, then we'd have a healthier, more sustainable lifestyle.
Thought-provoking stuff, I'm sure that you will agree. We've also got a manifestation in this space called Facts Fight Back, and this continues the movement that we highlighted last year with the Rooted project. This is about the continued growth of evidence-based nutrition rather than factless fads based on celebrity hype. Dr. Hazel Wallace there on the left-hand side of the screen is a good example of this with her platform, Food Medic. It's an educational and media group platform. They aim to bridge the gap between traditional medicine and the latest thoughts and developments from a food, nutrition and other lifestyle areas. But there are lots of people now in this space debunking health. Ruby Tando, as an example, Pixie Turner, Laura Thomas, Rihanna Lambert, all in this space of debunking, of demystifying and bringing the facts behind health to the fore. We've also got experiential wellness. Think of this as health plus experience, and as trends within health evolve, they bring a more sensory aspect of eating with them, shrugging off the fusty idea that eating means limitation, compromise, rigor and willpower, and giving consumers something more to engage with. From a food point of view, this means we want food which is fast but healthy. We want sweet products that don't use refined sugars and artificial sweeteners. We want wellness that delivers brilliantly, looks stunning and tastes delicious. So where do we expect these big steps forward to be in 1920? Well, it's about health double speed on the high street. It's about one that we've called Heal Me Tea. It's about the sugar reinvention. We'll see Cadbury's launching their 30% reduced sugar dairy milk bar in 2019. It's about the restorative textures that come with health, those superfood, grains, powders, nuts and seed, and the feel-good, the endorphin rush that comes with eating those, and it's one that we've called Smashing Pumpkins. Well, health double speed is the evolution of fast food into fast healthy, and we're seeing this continue to grow and the real momentum behind it now. And just a couple of examples on the screen there. I mean, last year we talked about By Chloe. We've got many other examples of now. The Essence Cuisine, which is a cafe concept from US raw food pioneer Matthew Kenny. They also deliver to wherever you are as well using Uber Eats and Deliveroo. Fishbowl, another Australian concept, fast fish, counter-style bowl food made with rice and salad and so on, all cooked in front of you. But there are many other examples. Freshie, Dig In, Life Kitchen, all now really gaining momentum. Smashing Pumpkins. A top toast, something that can be a snack or a full-on meal, packed with freshness, seasonality and rawness, but until now, just the domain of the avocado. But there's a whole host of interest coming in this space, particularly in cafes and casual restaurants. It's about going beyond the toast itself into rye bread, crumpets, but also roasted aubergines. Roasted sweet potatoes are the carrier itself, all sorts of interesting sprinkles on the top, cumin, salt, dukkha, za'atar. But of course, going beyond the avocado, pumpkin, the sweet potato, things like carrot and harissa, miso and aubergine, beetroot hummus. Then we've got a really interesting one that we call flexi food. And this is the space where tech and food combine. And a really interesting playground going on here of tech-enabled eating. It's about next chef innovators. It's all about timing, and it's about find food your way. And tech-enabled eating is a really interesting one. We're living in an age of disembodiment, yet we are more technologically connected than ever before, and the possibilities seem endless when it comes to robotics. Robots conquering our kitchens, smart ovens become the go-to household appliance. And this is both because of the need for hyper-convenience, but also consistency and creativity. I know Alessandro will talk a little bit more about tech in the home kitchen environment later on, but have a look at the Creator Burger Bot, which is the one on the screen there. They've got some great videos online. Customers send their order via a tablet. They're able to customize everything from the bun and the sauce and the lettuce. The meat is ground by the machine in front of you, and it's then cooked to order to your desired level of wellness. We also see another concept, a really interesting one, called Spice Robotic Kitchen.
At Spice, we set out to create a new style of restaurant. We wanted to bring amazing meals to people at a more affordable price point.
Each meal is made to order in 3 minutes or less, starting at $7.50.
When we were 4 MIT students, we couldn't really find a decent meal at an affordable price point.
As robotics-obsessed engineers, we set out to create a new, efficient way of cooking food.
From our humble starts in our fraternity basement, we developed a prototype that really sort of proved we could build something that can create delicious, high-quality meals.
Our woks cook by constantly tumbling your food, which provides a really nice and even sear. They're heated with induction, and we have temperature control to perfectly cook your meal every time.
When we had the robotics nailed down, we knew we needed some culinary excellence to really bring this restaurant concept to life.
I'd heard of Daniel, and I knew that he was one of the top chefs in the world, and I decided to try to guess his email address. A few weeks later, I got a response.
Receiving this note from Michael, I was curious. A robotic kitchen was something that puzzled me a little bit. I needed to come to Boston. I discovered that the robotic kitchen brings precision, consistency, taste, and also freshness to the preparation. To complete the team, Spice needed an executive chef. And I found in Sam Benson his experience with me as executive sous chef at Café Boulu, also his experience in fast casual, was a very good fit.
Danielle and I were taking a very vegetable-focused menu, complex, delicious, and nutritious meals, being able to transfer it to the Spice Robotic Kitchen.
Spice was created to be affordable, tasty, and nutritious.
I really hope that our customers will leave feeling that they've gotten a delicious, exciting, and amazing meal at a really affordable price point.
So these robotics now starting to infiltrate the space of casual dining. Particularly with it all on show there, it becomes very transparent and very understandable and very real. The last one to mention in this particular space is Fine Food for Your Way. And this is about the fine fast outlet being the new wave of the future. This is about fine food democratized. Consumers are looking for high-quality, ingredient-led food, but without formality. We've seen the communal dining, we've seen the wooden benches, but this is about restaurant-quality food in a casual, more relaxed space. And we're seeing this spread both from the West and the East, often in a coffee shop or counter-style service environment. The examples on the screen there. Edition Coffee Roasters from Sydney with absolutely restaurant-looking food in a cafe setting. Also, Bar Bazzotto, which is a handmade pasta outlet in San Francisco. Others that I could name are Chico, which is a Chinese Korean in Washington. Kish Cash, which is a fast casual couscouseria. So, those are the key propellants, if you like, of what we believe are going to be those big forces for change within that food and drink revolution. There's a whole lot of things that I haven't talked about today that are continuing to evolve as they have done for the last few years, and you'll find that detail in the book to explore later on today and in the coming days and weeks through the book, and also the content that you'll find on Trend Hub as well. I'm not going to say too much about cuisines and ingredients. As many of you know, we have the Culinary Congress now, which will be in May next year. I'll give you the date later on, which is a 2-day exploration of cuisines, culinary movements, chefs, and cooking techniques. But there are a couple of key updates for you. There are a number of cuisines that have moved up in hype rating and moved up and to the right. And just to name those individually, that's modern Indian. Lots of interesting stuff happening, modern Indian from space, but also to a barbecue and fire cooking space. West African, or African I should say, has increased in hype rating and has also moved up and to the right. Not now just it's about Nigerian, but also Ghanaian, but also East African, Ethiopian food. There's lots happening within Chinese, dry pot cooking happening within Chinese. Bings are a thing as well, which are delicious egg omelets with a wonton inside, incredibly sensorial to eat. Middle Eastern continues to be modernized. And we've also, for the first time at the bottom left-hand side, put Russian and Eastern European and food from the STAN countries as well. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be everywhere very, very quickly, but we're starting to see the first murmurings of an influence, particularly on the bread and pastry side, so look out for that. Historically, cuisines are seen as a style of cooking from a particular region which is influenced by the surrounding environments, culture and terroir. But both culture and terroir are shifting and changing to a point where we can no longer classify cuisines against these two reference points. So you'll see this year that we've also added plant-based cuisine, eco and zero waste cuisine, and global cuisine to the trend-setting cuisines map, and all of the supporting detail you will find on Trend Hub. So that brings us to the end of the intro to the highlights and forces of change for the Food and Beverage Trends 1920. We're going to take a short 10-minute break and resume very shortly. Thank you.